Wonderful to be back here. It's so wonderful to see friends again and talk about these things with you. So it's been such a privilege, and I'm sorry that this third hymn is the last one I'll be doing for a while, but I'm really glad to be bringing closure to all this as well. So we've been talking about how the inherent worth and dignity of every person are our first principle. It's such a beautiful and radical and such an exhausting mandate to affirm everyone. It's easy when we love them and they agree with us, but it gets harder when we feel dismissed or insulted or taken for granted. Then it becomes more difficult to see their inherent dignity because we don't feel like ours is being recognized. So if we're really going to learn to live this principle, it's important to look inward at the barriers that prevent us from seeing this in ourselves as well as others. So our last couple sermons, we talked about noticing our triggers and our shadow projections. And now we're going to look at shadow work as a kind of an act of intentional humility. And again, I'll say I've been working on this idea of intentional humility in the humble shift with my students and teaching it. And I find the inherent irony in it easy to spot because I am not by nature a humble person. Like if humility is going to happen with me, it ain't going to happen by itself. Like I have to make it happen. And that sort of gives me hope, right? It's sort of like knowing the Dalai Lama gets nervous when he gets on a plane. It's like, okay, I'll be okay. All right. So let me go over a few things that we sort of talked about before. We talked about the shadow and how that is the socially risky part of who we are, and it develops when we're in childhood. It's a way for us to stay safe. We still feel these parts of ourselves, these shadowy parts of ourselves. We can feel them, but we have trouble thinking about them. That's sort of where our challenge is, that these feelings come up, but we're not quite sure where to put them, where to place them. So it's important to realize that when I get activated, this is part of my childhood replaying itself. This isn't really what's happening in the environment. So we talked about that. And we talked about anger and guilt and fear. About real anger, you need to have a transgression. False anger might be my shadows being triggered. Same thing with guilt. Real guilt is I made a deal and I broke it. Now I feel bad. False guilt, I just feel bad. I'd never accepted any deal. I never made it. I never broke it. So we talked a little bit about these activating emotions. We also talked about how we project parts of ourselves we're not comfortable with on other people. I'm not a know-it-all. You're a know-it-all. I'm not greedy. That guy's greedy. That kind of thing. And in short, what we deny in ourselves, we often accuse in other people. And so these are really important skills to help us live out this first principle, to help us diffuse or deactivate a shadow so we can see more clearly. When our shadow gets activated, we use our kind of defensive pride as a very fragile shield. It stabilizes us in the moment. It seems to, and it's a sort of I'm right, I'm justified, and I can see what's going on, and they can't. And it also feeds powerful emotions, anger, right? Whereas actually seeing my shadow is a moment of humility. I'm like, okay, I'm like something that I don't like in somebody else. Like, I'm just like my mom in a certain way. I'm just like my dad in a certain way. I recognize that now. I'm just like my kids. My kids are just like me. Those sort of humbling moments, right? So defensive pride is when we have that kind of activation moment. Now, we can have, healthy pride too, where it's like, I did something good, so I feel good about it. But healthy pride is based on something specific, and so we can tie it to something. Defensive pride is when I walk into a room, like for me, it would be walking into a room, probably in a conference full of peers, and I start thinking, these people don't know what they're talking about, right? They don't know what teaching really is. That's defensive pride. Now I'm ready to be activated, right? So defensive pride is sort of like a global thing. I'm better than them for some reason. All right. So the goal here is for us to move from these feelings of resentment and upset into feelings of patience and gratitude, to sort of swap these emotions out. So how do we do this? Let's talk a little bit about what humility is and isn't. What it's not Humility is not low self-esteem. It's not being passive. It's not being meek. It's not letting yourself be pushed around. That's something different. What humility is an accurate self-appraisal of who we are. It's being aware of our limitations, understanding them, not denying them, working with them. So it's a kind of secure self-acceptance. I know what I can do and I know what I can't do, and I'm okay with that. Now, when we see with humility, we can start to drop our defenses. When I start to see with humility, it opens up room for gratitude now, too. So it allows me to see myself as I am, with my flaws and all, without a need to sort of be better in order to be valuable. I'm valuable enough, even with all my warts. It's not about becoming smaller, it's about becoming more accurate. So when you think of humility, it's like, all right, how can I be accurate about myself and accept myself at the same time? It's a challenge because it requires a kind of brutal honesty and endless self-compassion to do this. All right, so what is a humble shift? How does that actually work? When I feel, let's sort of take this moment where you feel a sting of wounded pride, right? You feel you're not being listened to, you're not being recognized, you're being taken for granted. So we start getting angry and resentful. But can we look under that and see what kind of shadow fear is actually driving this? Underneath our resentment is maybe a fear of feeling insignificant or powerless or linked to some sort of shame. When I realize that the issue isn't some sort of pride or resentment, but actually a fear from childhood, it breaks pride's hold over me, and I can see what's really going on. It's not the environment that's threatening me. It's a retelling of some story I have from childhood. So think of it as a kind of triangle between pride, shadow, and then moving to humility, right? We want to cling to our pride because it feels powerful, and it feeds powerful emotions. It feels very powerful to feel angry. But anger, most of the time, is just a scary costume that we put on to hide our fear. I'm afraid someone might make me feel bad, so I get angry at them. I'm afraid someone might make me look bad, so I get angry at them, right? But most of our anger is misplaced fear. Most of our anger is misplaced fear. All right. So, when I can see that it's about fear, I can realize there's nothing to be afraid of. So when I see the shadow, when I say, I'm not really upset about being not recognized, I'm afraid that I'm going to be meaningless. Now I can ask myself some questions because I've broken pride's hold. I can ask myself some humility shift questions. I can say, all right, what's going on with the other person in the situation? I know I'm upset. I know I don't like how I feel. I know I don't like how I'm being treated here, but what's going on with them right now? Let me ask that question. What's there to be grateful about right now in the situation that I'm feeling resentful and angry or dismissed about? What's actually there to feel grateful about? Who should I be grateful to in this situation and why? Maybe I need to be grateful to the person that's irritating me. Maybe they're trying to help me, but it's getting under my skin, right? Because I'm feeling like I'm running late for something, which happened this morning. Well, the fourth question, what would humility look like right now? Like, what would humility look like right now in the situation? So asking these questions and answering them moves us out of that irritation, that distress, that feeling of loss, and moves us more into gratitude. Humility and gratitude hold hands. You kind of can't have one without the other. As soon as I'm grateful to somebody else, I'm humbled by that because I'm dependent on them. They've done something for me. So asking these three questions can really help us move in that direction. For example, we might find ourselves angry during an interaction where we don't feel heard or recognized or appreciated, and so our pride's wounded from the lack of attention we've received. So we begin an angry internal narrative of resentment and hurt, and these feelings feel really justified in the moment. Well, they're not talking to me. Well, how can this person even call me their friend? they seem justifiable. And so we identify with our pride and its defensive emotions because we're trying to hide the real reason for why we're upset, and that's our shadow's fear. When we realize that underneath the ego and the pride lies a shadowy fear of feeling insignificant, feeling powerless, feeling ashamed, then our identification with the pride's broken because we can see what's really going on. I'm not really angry, I'm scared. Then we can engage in a humble shift that moves our perspective away from our self-centered view of the situation, like, how is this affecting me, to an other-centered view, like, okay, how the other person feeling? How are other people in the situation being affected by my response to the situation? So we may find ourselves grateful to be in the company of people with so much experience and understanding, and maybe we don't need to talk so much. Maybe we don't need to feel so heard. Maybe we don't need to feel so seen, because we're just grateful to be there. I have to remind myself of this every single time I'm in a faculty meeting, because I can't stand them. But I just tell myself, I'm like, you know what? You're lucky to be in a faculty meeting because that means you're on the faculty. And it's like, that's right. I'm lucky to be here. I'm grateful to be here. I'm glad all my colleagues are happy I'm here too. Let's start our little play, you know. All right. When we break that connection between defensive pride and the shadow, it opens up this space for humility to take hold. And it can bring down these feelings, and it helps cultivate positive feelings of gratitude and contentment. The other thing about humility, and I was talking about this with my students recently, is that happy and sad come and go. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad. Anger and things, they come and go, right? But when something feels right, it doesn't change. Something that feels right stays that way. Something that feels wrong generally doesn't change either. Humility always feels right. I always feel like, okay, now I'm safe because I'm safe from regret. If I can stay humble, I can be safe from regret. I can be safe from hurting someone's feelings, right? It never doesn't feel like the right response. So I'll invite you this week, I'll get to my conclusion here, that when you feel activated, the next time you feel activated, the next time you feel taken for granted, talked over, not paid enough attention to, ask yourself, what's the real fear behind this? Right? What's behind my pride? What am I really afraid of? And then if you can identify that, and it generally comes down to meaningless, powerless, ashamed. If I can see that that's my shadow, which is a child, it's not an adult that's angry, upset. It's a child that's afraid. If I can see that, I can break it, and now I can ask myself, okay, what would humility look like right now? Thank you.